Welcome back to The Burn. I am Ryan Van Dever, and we are presented to you by Hot Zone Sports. Information that you need to know, built with you in mind, for the people, by the people, and with the people. Join the Hot Zone Sports community today. Remember, our show is wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify. So if you could rate and review us, we would really appreciate it. If you are watching on YouTube, first off, congratulations. And secondly, subscribe to the show. And then hit that notification button so you always know when our content drops. Make sure you like the videos, subscribe, and share it with your friends. And wherever you like the social media, we are there. That's right. You can find us at Hot Zone Sports. Just look for the logo. In this episode, we are going to take a deep dive into the new college football rankings, and as always, give the previews of the most important games of the weekend, and we might as well get right to it. Mr. EatDaWheaties is back with us again. How are you doing,
Hello.
man?
Good. It's been a good day today. Nice to be back.
Oh, yeah. We got a big show for everybody. So let's just get right into it. The college football playoff rankings came out yesterday, as a matter of fact, and we're going to do a recap. Now, Oregon, they're at number one. They're projected as the number one seed. Ohio State is the projected number 5 seed in that number 2. Texas is at number 3, the projected number 2 seed. Look out, Texas A&M. Penn State, they're at number 4 as a projected number 6 seed. Notre Dame, they're projected number 7 seed. Miami, they're projected number 3 seed. Georgia, projected number 8 seed. Tennessee, projected number 9 seed. SMU, projected number 10 seed. Indiana, projected number 11 seed. Boise State, projected number 4 seed. And then it goes Clemson, Alabama, Ole Miss, South Carolina, Arizona State is a projected number 12 seed. And then you have Tulane, Iowa State, BYU, Texas A&M, Missouri, UNLV, Illinois, Kansas State, and Colorado. So let's get right into it. Boise State, they're the top group of 5 program in Tuesday's release. You know, they're sitting at number 11 with the 12-team playoff model, granting automatic bids to the 5 highest-ranked conference champions. The Broncos stand in pole position to earn the opportunity should they win their league. Now, at this juncture, they would receive a bye. Other group of 5 teams in this week's rankings are Tulane at number 17 and UNLV at number 22, with Army dropping out of last week's top 25. My biggest issue is going to be Tulane and UNLV because they could ultimately overtake Boise State. What do you think?
Tulane is going to have to go in, win the conference. So they're going to have to beat Memphis this week, and they're going to have to go against Army, and they're going to have to beat them pretty well if they want to try to get all the way up to number 11. Or they have to hope that Oregon State can either beat Boise or whoever makes their Mountain West championship can somehow beat Boise. I would say Boise is a good team, but I would say they have a Heisman for a running back, and the rest of the team is not as skilled. They're still dangerous. I don't know if I'd want to play them if I'm one of these schools. Let's see who's supposed to play them. Maybe it's Notre Dame right now is the projected, or sorry, it would be between Arizona State or Ohio State currently. So things could get ugly pretty fast.
And, you know, when I thought about this 12-team playoff when it first came out, I thought that we were going to get more of a concise picture throughout the season. But the college football playoff picture, it should be getting clearer, but it's really not at this point. I mean, with the chaos that ensued in the SEC last weekend, and then you got the Big 12. I mean, there's many different scenarios in the Big 12, and then you have the ACC and the AAC. Actually, like it's just how are you feeling about all of these different scenarios throughout the season? And the closer we get to the playoffs, the more freaking nuts it's getting.
Well, you see, you would think you would get narrowed down, but what I think is going to happen this year is we're going to have teams that are definitely able to make the playoffs. They're going to be left out. Teams that normally would, maybe not normally, but that could definitely win a game in the playoffs might get left out just because either teams are too good right now, like Oregon, I would say Miami. Those two teams are solidified number 1 and 2 in my mind. But the rest of them, like the SEC, kind of had a down year and the worst year possible for them to have a down year right now. A lot of 2 and 3 loss teams, and they might get left out, and that's probably a good thing for the health of college football right now. Yeah, you're gonna see. So we're gonna talk about the Big 12 in a little bit. 256 scenarios that can still occur for that league regarding the college football playoff and championship. So it's definitely interesting to watch. But it makes everything a lot more means a lot more right now, especially because those programs that previously might not have had a chance, say K-State, we weren't going to make the 4-team playoff unless it was in the BCS era. Well, they're still competing for a spot. It's out of their hands, but they're all in the race. So
now, let's dive into the SEC because, as we all know, last weekend was absolutely just went batshit crazy. SEC, like last week, they were arguing it deserved 5 teams in this year's college football playoff. No surprise there. Everybody in the SEC thinks they're better than everybody else, but there have already been proposals where the league, along with the Big Ten, would get 4 automatic bids in future years. Well, if you want to know the nightmare scenario for the SEC in the 2024 12-team field, it's this. It's just 2 teams. After that last weekend where the underdogs Florida, Oklahoma, and Auburn upset Ole Miss, Alabama, and Texas A&M, the league just has 3 teams in the current bracket. Texas, the presumed SEC champion, is number 2. Georgia, which has already clinched a spot in the SEC title game. And then there's number 8, Tennessee. They are seeded 9th and would play in Athens in the opening round. Alabama, number 13, Ole Miss, 14, and South Carolina, 15, all sit on the outside looking in, stuck with 3 losses. But here's how it could go wrong for the SEC. And just bear with me. Number 20, Texas A&M, defeats Texas on Saturday in College Station. That loss drops Texas to 10-2, but without a single victory over a ranked opponent. The committee drops the Longhorns from 3rd in the rankings all the way out of the bracket. Texas A&M advances to the SEC title game, but loses to Georgia to finish the season at 9-4. The Aggies would be out. Yes, there is more to this. It's sending actual chills down my spine talking about this. That leaves Georgia with the automatic bid and seeded 2nd overall. Meanwhile, Tennessee, 10-2, if they would end up beating Vanderbilt, is safely in the field and likely hosting the first-round game. But that's it. There would be an open slot for someone to jump into the one Texas would be giving up, but currently the committee likes number 12 Clemson over Alabama. Clemson, meanwhile, they're hosting number 15 South Carolina. If the Tigers were to defeat the Gamecocks, then Clemson is going to be the team that is positioned to move up. Either way, the SEC is going to need some help. Notre Dame losing at USC and falling out would free up 1 bid. Miami losing at Syracuse could do it as well because it would end the possibility of an ACC title game featuring 11-1 SMU against 11-1 Canes, a matchup of 1-loss teams where even the loser could stay in the field. But the ironic twist is Indiana may still have one of the biggest playoff winners Saturday, even though they were blown out 38-15 against Ohio State. While that was the Hoosiers' first loss of the season, there were questions about their overall resume, even when they were undefeated. After all, the best win in terms of Big Ten standings came against 6-5 Washington. And there was a narrative emerging that Indiana didn't belong ahead of any of those multi-loss SEC teams that played harder schedules. I know this is a lot, Mr. EatDaWheaties, but the SEC is massively scrambling right now. What do you got to say about all that?
If you're an SEC fan right now, you have to hope that the favorite teams win this week. You have to hope that every single team that's favored wins and dominates. And honestly, you have to hope that either Clemson maybe loses if you want the most SEC teams. You want to hope that Clemson loses and somehow the Gamecocks make it into the playoffs. I personally am not a fan of any three-loss team making it, but I could see it happening. Um, I I I do think that Indiana should be in, um, although that they still have to win um, this week, I believe. But they should be in. I don't think any one-loss team should be out of this ever. So, in my mind, hopefully Texas makes it, Miami, Oregon, Boise, and then Ohio State, presumably Notre Dame, SMU. Those are really the only teams that I can say for sure right now. And Texas isn't for sure because they got a big rival game coming up. We all know Texas A&M, Texas. Um, that'll be interesting. Texas has gotten the best of them lately, but you never know. A&M has been on and off this year. They're still holding tight. They're at number 20 right now, I believe. So still a dangerous team. If you're an SEC fan right now, you just gotta hope and pray that no upsets happen this week because that would be very bad.
South Carolina, they are in a very weird spot, sitting at number 15 right now. I don't have a problem with that. They play at number 12 Clemson on Saturday. Bama, if they beat Auburn, Ole Miss, if they beat Mississippi State, but if USC wins, they would have lost both of the head-to-head matchups with Ole Miss and Alabama, but would have a more impressive win in the final week of the season, defeating Clemson. So the question here is, if they do win, would it be enough to vault Bama and Ole Miss, or do we look at the resume and the head-to-head matchups, and how much does that carry weight?
In this case, I'd have to lean towards South Carolina. They didn't fold late in the season. We've seen Alabama kind of being wishy-washy, losing to unranked opponents. Beating the number 12 team in the nation in the last week of the regular season is a good indicator of where your team is. I believe they should get the nod over other SEC three-loss teams in this scenario.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the Big 12. The chaos that helped Indiana and others wasn't limited to the SEC at all, as 5-6 Kansas, probably the best 5-6 team in all of the nation, handed Colorado a third loss, while Arizona State gave BYU its second loss. As a result, there are still 9 teams with a chance to reach the Big 12 championship game. Good God. Heading into the final week of the regular season. Seeing how every team in the conference has at least 2 losses, and there will be more defeats before the final 12-team field is revealed. It is difficult to envision the Big 12 getting more than one team in the playoff, and there has been multiple networks this week actually trying to say that the Big 12 shouldn't even get an automatic bid at this point, as how badly the conference is playing. What say you?
So, for anyone that was listening earlier, 256 scenarios still. 9 teams still able to reach the Big 12 title game. Now, if BYU and Iowa State were still undefeated or were 10-1 this week, I would argue that 2 to 3 Big 12 teams could make it. But at this point, they're not a strong enough conference for multiple teams, multiple 3-loss teams to make it. So just gotta hope that whoever wins the conference championship game is actually the best team on the field that day.
Yeah. I mean, BYU, I see them as the top grouping, but from all the projections that I've seen, if BYU does end up winning that Big 12 game, they're going to be on Ohio State's side of the bracket, and so Ohio State they would play, they would play them first, and then secondly they would end up playing Boise State. I mean, if I'm Oregon, that would piss me off, but whatever.
Yeah, so it seems as if the committee's projecting the Big 12 team to be number 12, which is fitting, the 12th ranked team. So that means they play number 5. And so in this scenario, that means they'll either probably play Ohio State or Boise. And Boise would be a challenge. I could see Big 12 team beating them. Ohio State, oh, that's going to be a tall task for anyone. I do think the Big 12 is a great conference, but with how the year's gone, I just don't know if any team in the Big 12 stacks up to Ohio State. We will be carefully watching it though, because you could have K-State still make it, Colorado, Arizona State, BYU, Iowa State. So honestly, if I'm thinking I'm gonna get the 5 seed as Ohio State, I'm gonna make the Big Ten championship and then probably lose to Oregon. I'm assuming, maybe not, but say Ohio State makes it, you have to be game planning for all of the different teams that you might face because you don't know exactly who you're facing yet. And you still have a few weeks. I mean, the first game is played on December 20th and that weekend. But you just have to be careful because each team plays a little bit differently. I'm not sure. It's going to be a rough ride for all of us Big 12 fans, especially us K-Staters.
Yeah. Now, the ACC, it also wouldn't be surprising if the ACC ends up with one team in the playoff, although it still has 3 legitimate contenders in SMU, Miami, and Clemson. SMU, they control their own destiny and have already clinched a spot in the ACC championship game, while the Hurricanes are a win over Syracuse away from joining them. Yet Clemson is going to jump into the conference game if Miami slips up and perhaps have the opportunity to reach the playoff as well. Another noteworthy move is SMU jumping up to the number 9 spot, ahead of Indiana and Boise State, which squeaked out a win over Wyoming. The Mustangs may still have a chance to win the ACC to get into the field, but a competitive loss to Miami in the ACC championship may allow them to hold their spot. One thing is for sure, with so much hanging in the balance, the rankings will look different at this time this week. That is for certain. If you are into chaos, take a look down the bracket where you find AAC leader Tulane up to number 18 this week, and Mountain West's second best team, UNLV, at number 2. If both went out, it would knock out Boise State out of not just a bye, but the playoff altogether. Then you got one of those two would become the 5th highest ranked conference champion and land a 12 seed. But here's another one. What if the Big 12 blows up and produces a 3-loss conference champion? Boise State still wins, but could Tulane jump over the new Big 12 champ and put 2 group of 5 power conference champions in the field? I think that is less likely, but you never know because this season has been absolute chaos.
It's been chaotic. You see conferences overperforming, like the AAC with Army, Navy, and Tulane this year, doing extremely well outside of conference and in conference. And you see teams conferences like the Big 12 where the top just entirely devours itself. I mean, having 9 teams? I believe it's still 9. 9 teams still competing for that championship spot. this late in the season is just insane. I mean, yeah, it's just I don't know. Boise State is good. Tulane, I believe, is a better team than Boise State, but they just didn't do as good against, I think, Oklahoma, and they also lost a close one to K-State. So, I do think Tulane's a better team, but resume-wise, the committee might think differently than me. They often do. I mean, I thought Florida State was a top 4 team last year, but I mean, it's just going to be interesting to watch. You gotta, if you're a Tulane fan, hope that Boise State loses or that you just absolutely destroy both of the teams you play against. And if you're a Big 12 fan, uh, I would start praying that a two-loss team makes it, unless you're a fan of the other ones. So,
The time has come for these teams to make their final arguments, to make their final push to the selection committee. And who knows what they are even going off of, whether it's strength of record, strength of schedule, whatever it is. It's going to be a fun weekend of football as the regular season comes to a close. And why don't we just go ahead and jump into that fun weekend of football? Our first preview is going to be Kansas State and Iowa State. Man, this is going to be one hell of a showdown. It is a very high stakes showdown. The Wildcats are riding high after beating the snot out of the Cincinnati Bearcats 41-15, bringing their record to 3-2 in their last 5 contests. Meanwhile, Cyclones, fresh off a gritty 31-28 win over the Utah Utes, match that same 3-2 stretch as they head into the pivotal clash. Now, fueled by recent momentum, both teams look to take a critical step forward in the conference race. It's a matchup of resilience and resolve, basically. But Saturday is going to mark the 108th edition of Farmageddon. They really need to come up with a better name. It's so bad. The Cyclones won the last edition. Yeah. And they carry a 53-50-4 head-to-head advantage into one of the biggest games on this week 14's calendar. With a place in the Big 12 championship game on the line, Cyclones are a slight favorite. I believe last time I checked, it was 2.5 points, helped by being at home.
So for those who have been around the K-State or even the Big 12 Twitter universe before, you know just how terrible it is to play Iowa State at night in Ames. So, as a K-State fan, I'm bracing for this game. It could be very difficult, but I think both teams are going to pull out everything that they have for this game because the loser is out. There's no coming back. You're out if you lose. And yeah, I mean, it's going to be the battle of the quarterbacks. It's going to be, can Avery Johnson correct some of those interceptions that he's made? Can he be mobile? And it's going to be, is Rocco Beck going to be able to will this Iowa State offense to another 30-plus point game? And will the defenses be able to stack up? K-State, we all know their secondary is just a little bit wishy-washy back there sometimes. And Iowa State, they're pretty solid. Most of the area around the defense, they have 2 of the best cornerbacks in the nation, and right now you just gotta try to get past their defensive line. Senior night at night in Ames, it's always a hard one, but it's gonna be a game, and I suggest to everyone who listens that they should watch it because it's always one of the greatest games of the season.
It's always gone the right way for Iowa State this season. They were favored against Texas Tech, favored against the Jayhawks. Well, we all know what happened in those games. They've also covered the spread just once in their last 5. Kansas State hasn't been an underdog very often this year, and they've only covered the spread 4 times this year, which could be significant in such a tight game. Now, in this Big 12 matchup, loaded with implications, the Wildcats find themselves in uncharted territory as underdogs for the first time this season. The they sit in a prime position. But they can secure a spot in the Big 12 championship with a win. Kansas State to pass Arlington, Texas is a bit more ridiculous, hinging on a cascade of results elsewhere. Now, what would you say is going to be your key matchup of the game?
I think my key match for this game is going to be Jalen Knoll against this K-State secondary. They're going to have to hope that they can keep him from one of those 100-yard receiving games that we've come so often to see. So Jalen Knoll and that K-State secondary. I don't have a specific player out of the secondary, but that's going to be the big factor in this game. Trying to keep Jalen and Jaden both under 100 receiving yards each is going to be very important to winning this game. Make Iowa State pound the ball. They haven't had quite the best running game, and just try to limit what they can do offensively.
I have it Avery Johnson against the Cyclones defense. For one reason, the Cyclones have struggled against the run, allowing an average of 5.1 yards per carry. That is going to open up the door for the Wildcats rushing attack that's been dominant, led by Avery Johnson and DJ Giddens, who combined for 281 yards on the ground last week.
I would say if you're a K-State fan, hope they keep it on the ground, but know that Avery Johnson is a decent passer and will be able to hopefully keep it safe. If you're an Iowa State fan, limit the rushing attack of K-State and try to exploit their weaker cornerback room and just see what you can do. Yeah, it's going to be a game. It's going to be a game for sure. You always say that you don't think the upset's going to happen. But Arizona, you get upset this year, you are out. You don't have any more chance to get into the Big 12 championship unless there's some crazy every other team loses. I don't know. There's so much. I can't keep track of all of them anymore. But Arizona, good quarterback. They have a good receiver, and Nick Millen. I think that's how you say his name. And other than that, I don't know a whole lot about their team. They were projected to be very good this year and just really fell short of expectations. I don't know if that's due to injuries or anything or what. But Arizona State has played far above their expectations this year. Beat K-State at home.
Moving on to the South Carolina-Clemson match. For this matchup between Clemson and South Carolina, the stakes couldn't be any higher. And it hasn't been like this very often over the years. There has been one other time in the last decade that the Gamecocks have come into this game being ranked. South Carolina has much more to play for than just trying to spoil Clemson's season this year. Clemson and South Carolina both have their playoff hopes still alive and well. A loss for either team could take them out of contention to reach the first ever 12-team college football playoff. A win was going to keep these hopes alive. The rivalry is more special considering both teams are ranked for the first time in over a decade. But I don't know. I have the Tigers continuing to dominate this rivalry. It's going to be a close game, but in the end, I see Dabo Swinney's team scoring late to take the win. South Carolina just one win in the last decade over Clemson, which was in 2022, and I have a feeling it's going to stay that way. Clemson can win this one and keep their playoff hopes alive if they want to.
Win-win situation for Clemson, I believe. I just don't see South Carolina winning, although I'm not going to say they can't. But Clemson, you win, you're in. South Carolina, you win, and you might be in. We'll see. You're going to need someone to lose in the top 12, like another top 12 team to lose or get dominated. But yeah, it's going to come down to it. I like Cade Klubnik, so I think Clemson has this easily. We'll just see how that goes.
We'll add a little pushback. Lenore Sellers. Lenore Sellers isn't afraid to throw the ball down the field or use his legs to make big plays. He did that against Alabama. But as with many young quarterbacks, they are prone to making mistakes. The Gamecocks have been fun to watch this season. All three of their losses came against ranked teams. And Clemson has the worst loss between the two, which is Louisville. I think it's just going to come down to the turnover battle. I know that's a little bit cliche, but when you have a young quarterback on South Carolina who is prone to making mistakes, I think that might be the key matchup of the game right there.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the key. I will say, if Nick Harbor and that receiving core gets going early, it could be very, very hard for Clemson to contain them. But young quarterback makes mistakes. Clemson, although they haven't always been super consistent this year, playing some close games and losing a few, I think they're overall the better coach team. And although South Carolina will be better next year with some more age, I think Clemson takes it this year too.
Yeah. All right, our next matchup is going to be Arizona State. I know what everybody is thinking. Why are you talking about Arizona State and Arizona? Well, because there are playoff implications and Big 12 implications when it comes to this game. And we all know what rivalry week brings. A lot of the time it brings up upsets, especially when the other team hasn't played that great. But this matchup between Arizona State and Arizona is going to have implications for one team. Now, can little brother beat big brother? We're going to find out on Saturday. But this is not going to make this game any less important. The Sun Devils have to put themselves in position to make the Big 12 championship game and move up the rankings to try and secure an automatic spot. As it stands right now, the race to the Big 12 is muddy, with 4 teams 6-2 in league play headed into this weekend. Arizona State 9-2 is the highest ranked team among them at number 16, reeling off 6 wins in its past 6 games. The Sun Devils would be heavy favorites to win the majority of tiebreakers if needed to secure a spot in the conference championship game, but the only way to even be in that mix is to beat Arizona, which has won their past 2 meetings. Pressure. The Wildcats are 4-7 on the season and are out of bowl contention and playoff contention, so they really only have one thing left to play for: the Territorial Cup. I bet you guys didn't know that.
Yeah, it's going to be a game. It's going to be a game for sure. You always say that you don't think the upset's going to happen. But Arizona, you get upset this year, you are out. You don't have any more chance to get into the Big 12 championship unless there's some crazy every other team loses. I don't know. There's so much. I can't keep track of all of them anymore. But Arizona, good quarterback. They have a good receiver, and Nick Millen. I think that's how you say his name. And other than that, I don't know a whole lot about their team. They were projected to be very good this year and just really fell short of expectations. I don't know if that's due to injuries or anything or what, but Arizona State has played far above their expectations this year.
I will say that Scattaboo, I think he's going to have a monster game. He's one of the best running backs in the Big 12 and the nation. He consistently gets over 100 yards per game. He is the go-to weapon for the Arizona State Sun Devils. And so if Arizona can somehow stop him, I think they will be able to limit that offense a little bit. And Arizona is playing at home, so we have to keep that in mind. But I still have Arizona State coming on top. I don't think Arizona State is going to slip in this spot. All right, so we are going to dive a little bit more into this Texas A&M game because this game in particular has massive implications, as we had already said. Texas A&M. Oh my gosh, it couldn't get any bigger. I personally was hoping that Texas A&M would pull it out over Auburn, but they did not do themselves any favors in their last game when they went down 21-0, and they just couldn't finish the job on Auburn. But the Texas A&M Aggies and the Longhorns are set to face off on the gridiron for the first time in 13 years. But if you ask any Aggie fan and any Longhorn fan, there is no love lost, and they will beg their teams for a win. That way they do not have to hear it from the other fandom on the other side of the fence. This is going to be their 119th matchup all time between the two programs. That is freaking insane. But considering Texas A&M can play its way into the SEC title game with a win against Texas and surely be eliminated from playoff consideration with a loss, it has got to be the Longhorns versus Aggies. A&M can still earn that number 1 seed or that number 2 seed. There isn't another team playing in a rivalry game such a broad range of possibilities. Then there's the stakes for Texas. Texas is 2 wins away from the number 2 seed. But if it doesn't reach the SEC title game, that would no longer be in play. Assuming Texas falls lower than number 5, if it loses to A&M, which is a safe assumption, the Longhorns would be in line for a difficult first-round matchup. No matter how this game finishes, it will impact the playoff field. The Longhorns enter this matchup sitting at 10-1, and thanks to a wild weekend full of upsets, they're more likely to make the playoff regardless of what happens on Saturday. But while Texas seems to be in a safe spot, they would also like to end any debate of whether or not they will be in the postseason tournament. The Longhorns have won 10 consecutive true road games under Steve Sarkisian, the longest active streak in the FBS. But the environment inside Kyle Field on Saturday night is going to be unlike anything these Texas players have experienced. Quinn Ewers and his squad must find a way to play calm and in control if they are going to get the job done in College Station. Let's talk about Kyle Field, for instance. I do think that it is a good atmosphere, but is it a difficult atmosphere? I don't think the 12th man is what it used to be like in the 80s and the 90s. They've kind of fallen off a little bit. So, are they going to be hyped up to have Texas play in their stadium? And to answer that question, I'm going to have to say, yeah, I think they will be hyped up. And they are going to have an effect on this game. Now, is it going to be the sole determining factor? No, it's definitely not going to be. But in the end, I do have Texas beating the Aggies and heading on to the SEC championship to play Georgia. And there's going to be one last game we're going to talk about, probably the biggest rivalry in all of college football, arguably the 120th edition of The Game, featuring number 2, Ohio State hosting rival Michigan on Saturday. Now, the key storylines in this game include Ryan Day. Yeah, he still hasn't beaten Michigan. And, well, in the last 3 games, he hasn't beaten Michigan. So he is going to look to snap that streak and prove to all of the nation that he can beat a Michigan team that has been playing like complete dog shit all year long. Yeah, that's basically what it's doing. But also, they are looking to secure a spot in a Big Ten championship. Michigan, under first-year coach Sharon Moore, hopes to extend its dominance, building on last year's victory while facing significant personnel challenges this season. They got injuries across the board, and their biggest issue is at quarterback, and it has been all season long. They haven't been able to get that position solidified. It makes you wonder what Sharon Moore was thinking when there was a transfer portal going on in the offseason, and there was a slew of quarterbacks in that portal, and Michigan didn't go after a single one of them. But if you go by the numbers here, Ohio State is 43-4 against all opponents since 2021. They are 0-3 against Michigan. Michigan State's defensive tackle duo has combined for 54 quarterback pressures and 6.5 sacks this season. Yeah, Ohio State has lost to Michigan in 3 straight contests, raising questions about Ryan Day's ability to overcome this rivalry. Michigan's quarterback situation, like I said, is uncertain, and its rushing attack has struggled mightily throughout the year, creating doubt about their chances in this matchup, as I'm sure everybody has seen on all of the popular networks. When this game starts tomorrow, I'm sure you are going to see the entire panel selecting Ohio State. But the problem is Michigan going to try and play spoiler? Ohio State leads the nation in total defense, 241.7 yards per game, and scoring defense with 10.7 points per game. Michigan has seen a drop in its pass defense. They're ranked 72nd nationally at 223.3 yards allowed per game. Bottom line here is the outcome of Saturday's game is not going to affect the playoff implications for Ohio State, but also shape the future of both head coaches, highlighting this intense rivalry significance in college football. A win for Ohio State is going to propel them to the Big Ten championship and national title discussions, while victory for Michigan would basically end up being their Super Bowl. So who do you have winning all of these games? Go ahead and post in the comments and let me know. Who do you have winning these games? Do you got Texas winning? Do you have Ole Miss beating Mississippi State? Do you have the Sun Devils beating Arizona and moving on to the Big 12 championship? Do you have South Carolina pulling the crazy upset against Clemson and beating them for the second time in over a decade? That would be wild. Do you have Iowa State cruising and beating Avery Johnson and the Wildcats? Well, let me know in the comments below. And as always, before you leave, give this video a thumbs up. Can you do that for me, YouTubers? You would be doing me a big solid, and it really helps us pop in a big way. Everything is free here. That's all we ask of you. So leave a comment below. And if you're on the podcast on Apple or Spotify, drop us that 5-star review and rating. It does help us out tremendously, more than you know. So thank you guys for doing that. And also follow us on all of our social media platforms at Hot Zone Sports and join the sports pages that is meant for you, because that is truly why we do this. This is truly for the people. So subscribe to the YouTube channel, click that notification button, and have a blessed Thanksgiving. And don't listen to Mr. EatDaWheaties. We all know pumpkin pie is not good. I mean, you basically got to throw everything on it just to make it taste good. But what is your favorite dish for Thanksgiving? I basically throw everything on a plate. You got the green bean casserole. You got the turkey. You got the ham. You got all the trimmings. Man, make me hungry just thinking about it. I hope everybody has a blessed Thanksgiving. Enjoy your time with your family. Enjoy your time with your loved ones. We got 3 games of NFL football going on Thanksgiving. Enjoy your time, because if there's one thing I do know, you cannot take back the time that you miss with your family. So that is it for me in Hot Zone Sports. I hope everybody has a great Thanksgiving. Stay blessed.